Today on Sports Central, we go over our next team projection of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Michigan State Spartans, a team that went 2-5 overall in the 2020 season. This team definitely was a big disappointment last year. Of course, they did have a new head coach in Mel Tucker, and it was kind of a rebuilding season for Michigan State. They did go 2-5 overall last year, but this is definitely a team that I think could very much improve in the 2021 season, and why that is what we're going over here today. We're also going over a few players this team will be losing, who they will be returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with the previous 6 games for Michigan State. And this team overall over the course of the season was pretty inconsistent, but I mean, look at their schedule here. They had a brutal schedule last season. They had to play Iowa, Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State, and Penn State in 5 straight games. Like, this team also had to play Michigan, which, I mean, Michigan at the time when they played them, like, Michigan was looking like a good team. I think they were ranked in the top 15 in that matchup. So overall, this Michigan State team had a brutal schedule last season. I'd probably say they had the toughest one in the Big Ten last year. I mean, they did beat Michigan 27-24, which that was a good win, obviously, since it's a rivalry, but it's also on the road. They did lose to Iowa though the next week, 7-49. This team got destroyed by the Hawkeyes in Kinnick Stadium on November 7th. But obviously, Iowa, they were a great team last season. That was a team that easily could have been in the Big Ten Championship last year. They got shut out to Indiana 24-0. That was a brutal loss there as well. But considering where Indiana was last season, like, that team, when they had Michael Penix at quarterback, that team was for real. I could easily see them being back as a contender next year as well. But for Northwestern, they did beat the Big Ten West champion in Northwestern. 29-20 was the final score in that matchup, which that was definitely a very impressive win there out of Michigan State. Probably the signature win of the season for sure, even though they only had 2 wins. But still, that was a huge win there. Northwestern certainly was a good team last season. That team, I mean, they kept up to Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship, so Northwestern was a good team last year. They lost to Ohio State 12-52. Obviously, I mean, the Buckeyes were outstanding last season. They made it to the college football playoff. Then they lost to Penn State as the last game of the season. 24-39 was the final score in that matchup. So really, for the Spartans, this team, they were 2-5 overall, which the record definitely does not look good. This team, record-wise, was one of the worst in the conference. But once again, look at their schedule here. You got Iowa, Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State, and Penn State all in 5 straight games. All 5 of those teams were good last season. Penn State especially, they improved a lot over the course of last season. They were playing their best ball at the end of the season. So really, for Michigan State, this team had a brutal schedule, and considering where it was in 2020, that was just a tough time for them. But first 3 games for Michigan State, they were 1-2. Last 4 games, they were 1-3. Looking at your roster preview, though, you'll see what I mean when I think this team could easily be very improved next season. Rocky Lombardi is transferring away, so he will not be with the team next season. Last year, he put up just over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So really, he was not a very good quarterback. I'll just admit it here. He was definitely mediocre. He put up a 53% completion rate as well, which normally a good completion rate would be right around, I'd say, 60-65% out of most quarterbacks. Rocky Lombardi was far below that benchmark there. Peyton Thorne looks to take over at quarterback. It looks like he'll be your starter for next season as of right now. He did play a bit last year. He put up just over 580 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions with a 57% completion rate. So he did have better stats than Rocky Lombardi did if you're looking at the rates. But Peyton Thorne definitely, I think, is a quarterback that, I mean, we haven't seen him very much, but he does have potential to be a good quarterback next season. They returned their top running back, Connor Hayward. Watch out for him next year. He only put up 200 yards last season with an additional 70 receiving yards, so he had right around 300 total offensive yards last season with a couple of touchdowns, but he does have potential. Watch out for him. As for your wide receiver core, you got Jalen Naylor coming back. He was the top receiver on this team last season. He put up just over 520 yards last year with 4 touchdowns. He had a good season. Watch out for him next year. He could definitely be a big target for Peyton Thorne. He could definitely also be a dark horse wide receiver in that Big Ten Conference. But as for the second wide receiver, Jaden Reed, he is also coming back. This team returns all 3 of their top wide receivers. Ricky White is also coming back for this team. And if you look at Jaden Reed and Ricky White, both wide receivers of which put up decent stats. Jaden Reed especially put up over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So yeah, watch out for this receiving core next year. This receiving core definitely has got a lot of potential. They were very young last season. They're going to be much more experienced going into 2021. I can tell you that much. They do this one on the offensive line, 2 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and then 1 in the secondary. So there are 4 total losses on the defensive side, which that's right around average. So I'm not very concerned about the defensive side there. But ways that Michigan State can make a bowl in 2021. I'm just going to say this right now. I think the big factor for Michigan State next season is the quarterback situation. If this team has got a quarterback that doesn't throw more interceptions than touchdowns and has a 60% plus completion rate, this team will be a bowl team next season. Like Peyton Thorne, he's definitely one to watch out for. You got a couple of the quarterbacks that will be fighting for the position, but it looks to be Peyton Thorne right now, considering he was the only other quarterback that had experience last season other than Rocky Lombardi. So yeah, this team has got potential. If the quarterback situation is good, if Peyton Thorne really improves a ton going into next season, this team will definitely be in the conversation for a bowl game. This team, though, I think if you're talking about 7 or 8 wins, this team could get up to that mark possibly if this team really improves, but I don't expect much else past that. I mean, this team did go 2-5 last season. You have to remember that. But with Mel Tucker as well, who knows? It's kind of tough to see how good of a coach he was last season. Obviously, since Michigan State, for one, had a brutal schedule, and for two, it was 2020 in general. So, yeah, watch out for this team, though, next season. This is a tough team to predict for that reason, though, with the quarterback situation and also Mel Tucker, and also, once again, the brutal schedule that they had last season. That's why this team is just such a hard one to predict. But I'll give you my best prediction, but it's gonna be tough for Michigan State this upcoming season. But chances of a bowl season, I'd say, are better than 50%. I think Michigan State is more than likely going to make it to a bowl game next year. Just the returning production on this team is looking really good going into next season, especially on the defensive side. But looking at your schedule, it's pretty tough. You start off the season against Northwestern. That's going to be an interesting game there on the road. I think Northwestern next season is going to plummet. I don't expect them to be anywhere near as good in 2021 as they were in 2020. Youngstown State, that should be a win there. Then you got Miami, of course, on the road. That should make for an interesting matchup there in Miami. Then you got Nebraska coming to East Lansing on the 25th. You got Western Kentucky as well. Western Kentucky should be a win. So you got easily 2 wins in your first 5 games. You got Rutgers then on the road, Indiana on the road. You got Michigan at home on October 30th, Purdue on the road, and then you got Maryland coming to town on November 13th, Ohio State on the road, then Penn State to finish out your season. So here's what I'm expecting out of the first half. Northwestern, I am probably favoring Michigan State in that game, actually. I think Northwestern, just looking at their returning production next season, that team is losing a ton. They've got a lot of transfers on that offensive side. Northwestern is going to be a very inexperienced team next season. I probably favor Michigan State in that matchup right now, but with it being on the road, I'm not going to predict anything right now. But Youngstown State's going to be a win. Miami's going to be an interesting one. I'm not sure who to predict in that matchup. That's pretty much a 50-50 game. Nebraska's going to be a close one. Western Kentucky's going to be a win. And then Rutgers is also going to be a close one because, for one, it's on the road, and Rutgers also improved a ton last year. So in your first 6 games, I got 2 guaranteed wins, which really is not terrible. That puts you in a decent position. But I definitely expect Michigan State to at least have 3 to 4 wins in those first 6 games. As for the second half of your schedule, you get Indiana, of course, on the road on October 16th. That's going to be a brutal game. I think Indiana next season is going to be just as good or even better in 2021 as they were in 2020. Then, of course, you got Michigan. That's going to be an interesting matchup. You got them after a bye week, so with it also being in East Lansing, that's going to be a good matchup there against Michigan. You got Purdue then. That's going to be a win, I think. Maryland's going to be a close one. Maryland is a team to watch out for next season with Tagovailoa as their quarterback. He's a big player to watch out for moving forward. Ohio State's going to be a loss. I'm not sure how else to state it. I think Ohio State next season is going to be right back to being a college football playoff contender. And really, with it being on the road, especially after a close game to Maryland, I just don't see it happening. I think you do take a loss there against the Buckeyes. And then Penn State on November 27th. That's going to be a close one as well. I'd probably favor Michigan State, though, in at least half of these yellow games. I think Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, and Purdue are going to be your guaranteed wins. So you do have 3 guaranteed wins up here. But if you look at the rest of your schedule, I mean, Miami, that's going to be a close one. Northwestern, I'd probably favor Michigan State in right now. So I'd probably favor you in Northwestern game. Probably the Nebraska game. I'd probably say Michigan game too, to be honest with you. I think Michigan will be improved next season, but with it being at home against Michigan, that could make for an interesting matchup. Maryland, I'd probably favor the Spartans as well. So really, I think your projection is going to be 6-6 next season. I've got you just making a bowl game at 6-6. I almost projected 7-5 for Michigan State. I mean, I could easily see this team getting either 6 or 7 wins. I think 6 or 7 wins is definitely going to be your main benchmark next season. Ceiling, meaning the top of where you could be, is going to be 9-3. That's going to be kind of your the best that you could be, and then 4-8 is going to be your floor, meaning the minimal. But yeah, 6-6 will be a projection for next season. I've got you going to a bowl game and a halfway decent one as well. Thanks for watching, though. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the Spartans, record predictions, and all of that. Let me know down in the comments. But then, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys later.